Do you know the hidden rules of a late-night grocery store? Not the ones on the job postings, but the real rules. You don't? Then you're lucky. But if you hear this story now, you'll know the rules too. And once you know them, there's no escape. My name is Aaron Gray. 2 weeks ago, as a night watchman at West Market in Pennsylvania, I broke all 8 rules to get out alive. But this is the result. That cursed saxophone melody that plays on my car radio every morning. No matter what station I tune into, the same music repeats endlessly. But that's just the beginning. I wake up at 6 a.m. sharp and brew coffee. Take a shower. I repeat my usual routine. But my face in the mirror looks dead. The dark circles under my eyes can no longer be hidden with concealer. What's most terrifying is that as night approaches, that saxophone sound starts to echo in my head. It's as if my internal clock has been adjusted to West Market's operating hours. It all started 2 weeks ago, the night I found that job advertisement. $21 an hour, midnight to 6 a.m. Night security for a grocery store. I didn't have time to wonder why a closed store needed a security guard. Chasing debt, the amount was enough for me. I thought I found the ad by chance, but now I'm not so sure. That night, I spent 3 hours browse online job sites, flipping through pages and repeatedly changing my search criteria. As I stared at the screen with tired eyes, the ad suddenly appeared. It was as if the ad found me. West Market Night Security Guard wanted. Strangely, there were no photos attached to the ad, no exterior shots of the store, no interior views, nothing. Just text, written in an unusually small font. When I spoke to a man named Clive during the phone interview, his voice was strangely tense.
You must always follow the rules.
He repeated multiple times, as if my life depended on it. Did something happen to the previous person? I asked, anxious because of his insistence. After a long silence, Clive replied,
He left for health reasons.
The agitation in his voice was clear, as if he was lying or hiding something important. What kind of health reasons?
I can't go into detail, but night shifts are tough on the body, especially that place.
The way he said that place bothered me, as if it were a special location. On my first night, when I saw the store at the end of a dilapidated shopping street, I finally understood why a security guard was needed. After a brief greeting with the hurried employees in the parking lot, I stepped into the store alone. The air inside was completely different from daytime. It was heavy, damp, and a faint smell of decay lingered somewhere. Every other fluorescent light was on, casting irregular shadows across the floor. I took out my flashlight and walked through the store, shining its beam. As I wove through the product aisles, my footsteps echoed strangely, emphasizing that I was the only one there. On top of Register 1, a piece of paper listed 8 rules. Rule 1. The night watchman must patrol the store every 30 minutes. The rest of the time, check the surveillance cameras in the back break room. Rule 2. Do not enter aisle 7. Do not look at it. Rule 3. Ignore any sounds from the freezers in the frozen food section. Rule 4. If you find an abandoned shopping cart, immediately return it to the storage area at the front. Rule 5. Don't be surprised if you find a pool of blood in the meat section. Bring a mop and bucket from the storeroom and clean it. But do not touch the blood. Do not step in it. Rule 6. If you see a woman in the store, immediately evacuate to the break room. Do not call the police. Do not make eye contact. Rule 7. The music playing in the store is recorded jazz. If the music stops, immediately evacuate to the break room and wait until it resumes. Rule 8. Under no circumstances shall you end your shift early. I reread it several times. It felt like a bad joke, but remembering Clive's tense voice, a chill ran down my spine, confirming this was no joke. On the back of the paper, small handwritten notes were scribbled, seemingly left by the previous occupant.
Day 1, stick to the rules, and you're safe. Day 3, heard voices in aisle 7. Stay away. Week 1, saw her. Whitey eyes. Run. Week 2, the music stopped for longer periods. Something is changing. Final day, I can't take it anymore. Someone else take this job. Don't break the rules. Never.
The ink at the end of the note was smudged. 12:06 a.m. I began my first patrol. Walking through the empty store was a strange experience. The daytime hustle and bustle were replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the low hum of the fluorescent lights. I walked through the aisles, starting from aisle 1, canned goods, pasta, condiments. The neatly arranged products had an unusual presence in the dimness. Occasionally, I felt as if I saw something between the products and turned around, but there was nothing. In the cereal aisle 4, I noticed something odd. All the boxes were facing the same direction, as if someone had meticulously rearranged them. Would the daytime staff be so fastidious in organizing products? In the frozen food section, I found it. A shopping cart, placed diagonally in the middle of the aisle, as if someone had fled in a hurry. There was only one item in the cart, a pack of raw meat. Its expiration date was 3 days past. Red liquid pooled at the bottom of the cart from the pack. Feeling uneasy, I put the item back in the freezer. The moment my hand touched the meat, it felt unusually cold, like ice. Rule 4. Return it immediately. I sighed. I hadn't expected cleaning to be part of security work, but rules were rules. As I pushed the cart towards the front, I noticed something strange. The sound of the wheels perfectly synchronized with the jazz music playing in the store, as if dancing to the rhythm. The jazz was a monotonous saxophone melody, repeating endlessly. It wasn't a beautiful melody. Rather, it made me feel uneasy, as if something was wrong. The tempo was slightly slower than normal, and the pitch was subtly off, as if the instrument was faulty or the musician was intentionally playing dissonantly. And then, as I approached the front door, I heard it, a faint sob. The crying came from aisle 7. It was a woman's voice, perhaps a child's. It sounded desperate, as if calling for help. I stopped at the entrance of aisle 7. For some reason, the back of the aisle was darker than the others. Were no fluorescent lights on, or was something blocking the light? I looked up at the aisle sign, which read, "Frozen Foods, Ice Cream." However, I couldn't see any products. It was as if the shelves themselves were shrouded in a black mist. "Is anyone there?" I called out.
Help me.
Came the reply. My feet stopped at the entrance of aisle 7. Rule 2. Do not enter. Do not look. Come out of the aisle. Then I can help you.
Help me.
The same words, the same intonation, as if playing a recording. I listened carefully. I felt another sound mixed with the crying. A low growl, or something crawling.
Help me.
This time, the voice's location changed. It moved from the back of the aisle to near the entrance. Something was approaching me. A cold shiver ran down my spine. This was not a human voice. The crying gradually grew louder and then turned into laughter. Not a child's laughter, but the laughter of something else, something not of this world. The laughter was monotonous and mechanical, as if mimicking the act of laughing without containing any emotion. It sounded more like a machine producing laughter than actual laughter. And then, mixed with the laughter, another sound began to emerge. A wet, squelching sound, like something dragging itself across the floor. I rushed past aisle 7 to the register to get my phone. The moment I crossed the aisle, the laughter stopped. Instead, heavy footsteps followed me. The footsteps were not human. The stride was abnormally long, and each step was unusually heavy, as if something gigantic was chasing me. I felt an urge to look back, but I remembered Rule 2. Do not look. The sound didn't stop until I ran into the break room. The break room was a small, dimly lit room. The only window was covered with black paper from the inside, and the only light came from the pale glow of the monitor. Several notes, seemingly left by the previous occupant, were taped to the wall.
Monday nights are especially dangerous. Between 3 and 4 a.m., pay attention to the music. Listening to the freezer sounds for too long will drive you mad. She remembers her life.
The last note was written in a different handwriting, as if the hand that wrote it was shaking, the letters distorted. I checked the surveillance camera footage. It showed various parts of the store, but aisle 7 was intentionally a blind spot, as if something wasn't meant to be seen. There were 12 surveillance cameras in total. However, camera 3, which was supposed to show aisle 7, was inexplicably pointed at the ceiling, as if someone had deliberately adjusted its angle. I tried to adjust camera 3 to the correct orientation using the control panel, but it didn't respond at all. The camera stubbornly remained pointed at the ceiling. The clock showed 12:30 a.m., only a little time until the next patrol. I opened a desk drawer and found some old newspaper clippings. West Market fire claims 3 lives. Supermarket fire, cause unknown. West Market reconstruction faces local opposition. The articles were dated 5 years ago. Photos of the 3 people who died in the fire were included. 2 employees and 1 shopper. The female shopper was wearing a blue dress. As I gazed at the photos, I wondered, why do these rules exist for this security job? Why is aisle 7 forbidden? Why must I hide if I encounter a woman? I was about to find out the answers the hard way. 1 M patrol. As I passed the frozen food section, it began. A light tapping sound, as if someone was knocking with their finger from beyond the ice. At first, I thought it was just the machinery of the freezers, the compressor vibrating, or ice melting and dripping. But listening closely, there was a distinct rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. 3 taps, then a short pause. 3 more taps, then another pause. It was as if someone was sending Morse code. Rule 3. Ignore it. I kept walking. The sound grew louder and eventually turned into a frantic pounding, as if desperately calling for help with both hands. The intensity of the sound seemed to correlate with my walking speed. If I walked faster, the pounding intensified. If I stopped, the sound quieted. It was as if something inside the freezer was monitoring my movements. I cautiously looked at the freezer door. Condensation covered its surface, and the inside was shrouded in mist, making it impossible to see through. However, I saw a shadow beyond the mist, a human-shaped shadow moving behind the door. I looked at the freezer door and saw it was covered with handprints on the inside. Handprints of various sizes, with abnormally long fingers and shapes that seemed inhuman. The handprints covered the door from top to bottom, without gaps, as if the person or non-human entity inside had desperately tried to get out, continuously pounding on the door. Among the handprints were also claw marks. Deep scratches ran across the glass surface. I ran. In the meat section, I discovered a huge pool of blood on the floor. The liquid glowed dark red under the fluorescent lights. Following Rule 5, I got a mop and bucket from the storeroom and cleaned it up. The pool of blood was much larger than I had imagined, about 2 meters in diameter, with a particularly dark center, as if something had lain there for a long time. I tried to mop it up, but the blood had seeped into the floor and couldn't be completely removed. The more I wiped, the more the blood stain spread thinly. The blood was thicker than expected and didn't feel like normal blood. And as I was wiping, I noticed footprints left on the floor. Bare, larger than human footprints leading from the blood stain towards aisle 7. The footprints were not those of a normal human. They showed evidence of 6 toes and an unusually wide heel, as if from a creature similar to a human but distinctly different. And some of the footprints also had sharp marks, like claws. Deep scratches, like an animal's claws, were left on the floor. 1:27 a.m., cleanup completed. I had passed the time for the next patrol. Exhausted, I could barely walk and slowly made my way around the store. And then, in aisle 9, I found her. A woman in a blue linen dress stood with her back to me. Long black hair hung down to her waist, and slender white arms dangled by her sides. In her hand, she held a basket filled with raw meat. Blood dripped from the meat, forming small puddles on the floor. She was perfectly still, not even appearing to breathe, like a mannequin placed in the store. But would a mannequin carry a basket and shop for dripping raw meat? I noticed that the air around her was colder than elsewhere, as if cold air emanated from her body. Rule 6. Immediately evacuate to the break room. Do not make eye contact. I quietly backed away. But then I heard her footsteps, the click-clack of high heels echoing. The footsteps were as regular as a clock's second hand, but the sound wasn't that of normal high heels. It was metallic and hard, as if an iron rod was striking a stone floor. The problem was that the sound wasn't coming from behind me, but from in front of me. Looking down, I saw black high heels and dripping blood. She was blocking my path. Her high heels were not ordinary shoes. Their tips were abnormally sharp, like weapons, and blood was dripping from the soles of her shoes too. I looked at her ankles. Her pale skin was covered with countless scars, as if she had been scratched or burned by something. I turned and ran, but the click-clack echoed in sync with my pace, following me like a shadow. As I ran, I tried to escape to other parts of the store, but no matter which aisle I entered, her footsteps didn't stop. It was as if she could exist simultaneously everywhere in the store. If I entered aisle 1, I heard footsteps from the other end of the aisle. If I entered aisle 3, I heard footsteps from the other end there too. My path blocked by a mountain of shopping carts piled in the aisle, I fled into another aisle. And then I made the worst choice. I stepped into aisle 7. It was sitting on the floor of aisle 7. Something in torn gray clothes, with pale skin. It was human-shaped, but clearly not human. It had strange bulges on various parts of its body, and most notably, it had no head. Its upper body, from the neck up, looked burned and charred. Black, carbonized skin spread from the base of its neck to its shoulders. The smell of burnt flesh permeated the entire aisle. The bulges on its body looked like burn scars. The skin had melted and hardened, forming unnatural protuberances. Its clothes were similarly burned and melded into its body. It was hunched over like a crying child, but when it heard my footsteps, it slowly stood up. Its movements weren't human. First, it placed its hands on the floor, getting on all fours. Then, it slowly rose like an animal. Since it had no head, I couldn't tell where it was looking, but it was definitely facing me, as if it could sense me even without a head. It took a step closer to me. Each time its burned feet touched the floor, there was a sizzling sound. I turned and ran, feeling something chasing me from behind, desperately heading for the break room. As I ran, I was tempted to look back, but I remembered Rule 2. Do not look. Still, the sounds from behind me were clearly not human. Animal-like footsteps, as if running on all fours, and an occasional wet sound. Though my whole body was trembling, I managed to escape into the break room. Confined to the break room, I checked the outside through the surveillance cameras. The woman in the blue dress stood in front of the break room, perfectly still, like a photograph. Blood continued to drip from her basket. Looking at her through the surveillance camera made her even more unsettling. The footage occasionally distorted, as if the reception on an old television was poor. I switched to other cameras to check the situation inside the store. Camera 2, aisle 7 entrance. The headless entity was crawling out of the aisle. Camera 5, frozen food section. The freezer door was being violently pounded from the inside. Camera 8, meat section. The bloodstain had returned to its original size, but something was off. Her feet were facing forward, yet her head was turned backward. Was her long black hair covering her face, or was her neck rotated 180 degrees? I returned to camera 1. She was still standing in front of the break room, but now her entire body was facing me. I didn't see the moment she moved. It was as if she had teleported. 20 minutes later, she began to walk. Her movements were unnatural and jerky, like stop-motion animation. Her way of walking was like a robot's, step by mechanical step. But occasionally, she stopped, as if a programmed machine was halting its processing. Switching to another camera, her face filled the screen. Pure white eyes. No pupils or irises, only blood vessels running like spiderwebs. Her face was not that of a living human. Her skin was waxy white, completely bloodless. Her lips were discolored purple, as if she had been frozen for a long time. And then her mouth moved. She seemed to be speaking, but no sound was heard. I looked away. Rule 6. Do not make eye contact. On the screen, she crawled up to the ceiling camera and then disappeared out of the store like a spider. Her climbing defied the laws of physics. It was as if she could move freely on walls and ceilings, defying gravity. Her fingertips had sharp, claw-like growths. She used them to grip the ceiling, moving skillfully like a spider. After she left, silence temporarily enveloped the store. However, I didn't yet know that this silence was the calm before the storm. 3:58 a.m. Exhausted from cleaning the blood and encountering the woman, I headed for the next patrol. Before leaving the break room, I checked the clock. 2 minutes until 4 a.m. I was about to enter the most dangerous time zone. The previous occupants note, between 3 and 4 a.m., pay attention to the music, flashed in my mind. As I walked through the store, I suddenly noticed the jazz music had stopped. How long had the music been stopped? I tried desperately to remember. I thought I'd faintly heard it when I was in the break room, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it had gone silent. The store was completely silent. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights was gone. It was as if the entire store had absorbed all sound. Rule 7. If the music stops, immediately go to the break room. I ran, but I didn't know when the music had stopped. Maybe it was already too late. As I ran, I realized even my footsteps were silent, as if I had been absorbed into a soundless world. In this abnormal silence, the only sound I could hear was my own heartbeat, but even that pulse gradually slowed, as if time itself was slowing down. On my way to the break room, I saw various abnormalities. Shopping carts piled up to the ceiling, countless hands pounding inside the freezers, bloodstains like footprints in the meat section. The shopping carts were piled up defying physical laws. They should have toppled over given the balance of gravity. but they were unnaturally stable, as if suspended by invisible threads. The hands in the freezers were moving more violently than before. Countless handprints appeared and disappeared on the glass surface, as if the entities inside were agitated. And from all seven, laughter continued to echo. But this laughter was different from before. Multiple voices overlapped, like a choir. Men's voices, women's voices, children's voices, and the voices of something inhuman mixed in. The laughter gradually grew louder and eventually filled the entire store. It came from all directions, as if streaming from the ceiling speakers. 2 hours left. I started a countdown. However, I noticed something strange when I looked at the clock. The hands weren't moving normally. Sometimes they reversed, or suddenly sped up. It was as if the flow of time was distorted within this store. Past 4 a.m., the situation worsened. Back in the break room, I checked the surveillance cameras, but all cameras were malfunctioning. Camera 1 showed the woman in the blue dress, but she was simultaneously in multiple places, standing at the register, walking down an aisle, clinging to the ceiling. It was as if she could multiply herself. Camera 2 showed the headless entity that had crawled out of all seven. It was now freely roaming the store, bumping into shelves as it wandered around like a lost soul. Camera 3 showed something that had overflowed from the freezer, a white, misty, yet distinctly shaped entity that covered the entire frozen food section. I understood. The 8 rules only functioned for a limited time. Only during specific hours of the night did these rules hold power in the store. But as dawn approached, their power weakened, and when the rules lost their efficacy, the entities lurking in the store would be free to act. 4:30 a.m. I was forced to make a final decision. Rule 8. Under no circumstances shall you end your shift early, but if I waited until morning, I might become one of them. I reached for the break room door. If I went outside, I would break the rules, but if I stayed, my life wasn't guaranteed. The moment I opened the door, all sounds rushed in at once. Laughter, crying, pounding, crawling, and above all, a terrifying silence. I ran desperately towards the store exit. From behind, I felt multiple presences chasing me. The click of the woman in the blue dress's high heels, the dragging sound of the headless entity, the wet footsteps of something that had emerged from the freezer. 10 meters to the exit door. 5 meters. 3 meters. As I reached for the door, someone's hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I turned to see the woman in the blue dress standing there. Her white eyes stared at me.
Why are you running?
Her voice was that of a living human, the voice of the shopper who died in the fire.
We've been waiting here all this time. For someone to stay with us.
I shook off her hand and pushed the door open. The outside world was bathed in the dim light before dawn. 6 a.m. The light of dawn streamed into the store. When I saw the employees arriving for work with coffee in hand, tears of relief welled up in my eyes. However, the employees' reactions were strange. They behaved as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened during the night. No one seemed to notice the abnormal state of the store. I quickly left the store and jumped into my car. I pulled out onto the main road, rolled down the window, and turned on the radio, expecting my usual rock music. But what flowed from the speakers was that cursed saxophone melody, the repetitive music I had listened to for hours inside the store. I changed the station, but it was the same music. Another station, the same music. I pulled the car over to the shoulder and examined the radio. I checked the antenna, inspected the wiring, and looked for interference from other electronic devices. But no matter how I checked, I found no abnormalities. I tried my smartphone music app. The same saxophone melody played. I borrowed another car's radio and tried it. Still the same music. I finally understood the retribution for breaking the rules, and that this horror wouldn't end. From that day on, my daily life changed. Saxophone music when I woke up in the morning. Saxophone music while I ate lunch. Saxophone music before I went to bed at night. The music took root in my head. Even with earplugs, even at the lowest volume, it continued to play. And as the days passed, other sounds began to mix with the music. The click of the woman in the blue dress's high heels, the pounding from the freezer, the dragging sound of the headless entity. I visited a psychiatrist. I was prescribed medication, but it had no effect. I tried hypnosis too. It was useless. The doctor diagnosed it as work-related stress, but I knew this wasn't an illness. It was a curse. 2 weeks have passed, and I know the truth. West Market was supposed to have closed 5 years ago due to a fire, but for some reason, it reopened for business. Ostensibly, they conducted repairs and ensured safety, but in reality, nothing has changed. The 3 people who died in the fire are still in that store, and they continue to hire people under the guise of night watchmen to take care of them. All the previous night watchmen continued to follow the rules. As long as they recognized and dealt with the entities appropriately, there were no issues with daytime operations. But I broke the rules. As a result, the balance was disrupted. Now, I face a new reality. The entities of West Market are beginning to influence the outside world through me. The saxophone music is proof of that, and I realized another terrifying fact. I am now becoming one of them. Yesterday, I found a job advertisement online. West Market Night Security Guard wanted, $21 an hour, midnight to 6 a.m. Below the ad, a small notice was written. Previous occupant resigned for health reasons. Experienced candidates preferred. Only those who can follow rules may apply. I reached for the application form and stopped. This is a trap to lure in new victims. But what if no one applies? Where will the entities of West Market go? After much deliberation, I made a call to Clive's number. Hello? What I heard on the other end was my own voice. The fact that you are reading this story means you now know the 8 rules of West Market. And once you know them, you, too, become part of this curse. Knowing the rules and following them are different matters. I broke the rules, and that's why this happened. But as long as you keep following them, you might be safe. But if you make even one mistake, you too will start hearing the saxophone music. Tonight, when you turn on the radio, listen carefully. If you hear the saxophone melody, that's the signal it has already begun. Finally, one warning. Do not tell this story to anyone else. Do not write it down. Do not record it. Because the more people who know the rules, the stronger West Market's power becomes. And when it reaches a critical point, they will come out of the store, to your town, to your home, to your bedroom. I am already too late, but you can still make it. Forget this story right now. But can one ever forget a terror once known?